Hi, my name's Anderson Race, and my speech today is titled Mental Health and the Stigma Attached to It. First of all, I'd like to talk about a little bit about my brother and what happened in our family. When my brother Chris was 16, he started withdrawing from people, and he would go in the other room by himself and just sit there. We were both using drugs at that time and drinking, but I was using more than him, so I didn't really understand what was going on with him, why he was acting so weird. And when he was 18, he started staying in his room all the time, and he would never come out. He'd always be in there, and he would cover his eyes. Like when he would come out, he would cover his eyes and only touch things with a napkin. And he refused to eat my mom's food. And there were several times when I heard him chanting things in his room at night, and it scared me. When Chris was 20, he was full-blown into his illness. He would take off for several days or weeks, and nobody knew where he was. And I don't know why my parents didn't file a missing persons report. They might have, I don't know. But I do know that the police found him a couple of times wandering around in some bad neighborhoods. And I actually asked him about it too, and he said that he would just go walk and just go wander around. And he didn't know where he was going, he just felt like walking. And he also, at one time, he just took off to California. He saved his money up for a Greyhound bus ticket, and he went to California and ended up having all these adventures out there. And then he called my parents when he got scared, and my parents had to go pick him up, had to go drive to California. I remember getting the call from my dad, and my dad saying, "Chris is in Compton," and I'm like, "Are you serious? I just talked to him yesterday."
Daddy.
And
Daddy.
So that's just one story about some of the things that he did. And eventually he was declared SMI, which is seriously mentally ill, and he was court ordered to take medication. He's gone off his meds a few times, and my parents have had to petition him to get him back on his meds. But right now he's actually doing really well, and he has his own place, and he's stabilized on his meds and doing well. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that because it's my own experience of mental health, and I also have some of my own experiences with mental health, with anxiety and depression. So my point today is to inform you guys about what mental illness is and how far we have come as a society in accepting people who have mental health challenges, and how far we still need to go. So first, what is mental illness? Well, from the Facts About Mental Illness pamphlet from NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, mental illnesses are biologically based brain diseases that can severely disturb a person's ability to think, feel, and relate to other people and the environment. And how common is it? I have some statistics here from the National Institute of Mental Health. It's from the website nimh.gov. And it says, first of all, I'll talk about any mental illness. They call it AMI, and that's just everyone in the entire United States. Anyone that has a mental illness. It says they're very common in the United States, and the data presented here is from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which defines any mental illness as a mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder, excluding developmental and substance use disorders. And it's diagnosable currently or within the past year, and it is of sufficient duration to meet diagnostic criteria specified within the DSM-4. And it can range in impact from no or mild impairment to significantly disabling impairment, such as in individuals with SMI. defined as individuals with a mental disorder with serious functional impairment which substantially interferes with or limits one or more major life activities. And these estimates, they don't include substance use disorders such as drug and alcohol related disorders, which is now, drug and alcohol use is now considered a disorder. So in 2015, there were an estimated 43.4 million adults aged 18 or older in the United States with AMI within the past year. This number represents 17.9% of all U.S. adults, which is a pretty high number. And to go further, people with SMI, serious mental illness, in 2015 there were an estimated 9.8 million adults aged 18 or older in the United States with SMI within the past year. This number represented 4% of all U.S. adults, which is also pretty high. And so I also would like to talk about how as a society we have come to accept people with mental health challenges and how far we still must go. And I want to refer to an article on PsychCentral.com. It's called Abandoned Minds, Social Justice, Civil Rights, and Mental Health by Daniel Tomasulo, PhD. And it talks about Geraldo Rivera was the one who initially started this interview with this guy, and his name was Dr. Wilkins, and he was fired from the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York. He had a coworker. Him and a coworker were fired for their concern for the welfare of the inhabitants. The person they were talking to was Geraldo Rivera on the phone. And on January 6, 1972, Wilkins and Rivera met at a diner. Wilkins still had the keys to many buildings, and the plan was set to bring in a camera crew to illegally film the inhabitants and their conditions. On January 10th, they entered building number 6. So the day those videos were taken marks the beginning of the mental health movement in America. Specifically, who received mental health services and how those services were delivered changed after those videos aired. But the powerful videos taken by Geraldo Rivera weren't the first time the conditions at Willowbrook were noticed. In 1965, Senator Robert Kennedy emerged from his tour of the Willowbrook State School, and he was visibly shaken by his experience, and he told this to a team of reporters, which I won't go into that, but basically nothing happened after that until the videos were aired on TV. And the atrocities captured by the Willowbrook video were so egregious that it closed as a result of the Willowbrook Consent Decree, a major contributing factor to the passage of the Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act of 1980. So mental health had officially become a civil right. The Willowbrook Consent Decree provided for the inhabitants, and by February 1987, the last resident left. By 1992, all were placed in small group homes. The next year, Judge Bartell, at the age of 95, signed a permanent injunction superseding the 1975 Willowbrook Consent Decree. Most injunctions are to stop something from happening. This one continued what the original decree had promised. The state would be required to spend $2 million to create 200 places for Willowbrook transferees in hostels, halfway houses, group homes, and sheltered workshops. That was the first time that had ever happened in the country. And the injunction, a document for dignity, continued what the Willowbrook Decree started, an active continuation of the Willowbrook class, and it took more than 20 years and over 100 court hearings. So why should we care? Deinstitutionalization is the effort to help people with mental illness move out of institutions into the community. It didn't always have the high-profile legal and financial backing of the Willowbrook Decree, And when people are moved out of institutions without follow-up and follow-along services, rates of homelessness increased, as did the rates of crime and joblessness. It is estimated that approximately 1/3 of the homeless are people with mental illness. The cost for institutionalization for taxpayers was high, and the quality of life for the inhabitants was low. But simply getting people out of institutions doesn't improve lives or the bottom line. Getting them out into viable community placements and training programs does. Deinstitutionalization didn't cause homelessness or criminal activity, but how it was carried out often did. So outcome studies show we can treat a person in the community better and much more humanely for less than half of what it costs taxpayers to keep them in an institution. If we help with supportive therapy and that individual gets a job, then he or she becomes a productive member of society and begins paying taxes. Once someone is in a group home and working, the cycle is complete. But any progress toward these goals has value for the dignity of the person being served and for the society as a whole. Providing for the civil rights and need for treatment of people with mental illness helps everyone. And there is good news amidst these facts. There is a shift taking place in the treatment and delivery of clinical services for people with mental illness. And this stigma of mental illness is getting better, and people are coming to more of a understanding of what it is and an acceptance of it. And so in conclusion, we've talked about what mental illness is and have addressed some accomplishments, and we've made as a society in dealing with the problem and the challenges we still face in really helping people and accepting them for who they are. So I ask you, what can you do to make a difference? Since mental health touches every family and affects everyone in some way. Remember my brother and what our family went through. Thank you.